question it's very easy. It has to do with, we've talked a lot today about student centricity and effective learning. These are two key talking points that you hear a lot about in the transition to digital as the why we're transitioning to digital. You know, what excites you about the potential of this refocus on both of these things, the student centricity and the effective teaching through the technology?
I think one of the things I see, we are a County Office of Education and we have an alternative education program, and also we serve students with disabilities. Mm-hmm. So I think this gives us a lot more power because it gives us options to personalize, because we get students who are lacking in credits. We have students who need the technology, they can use technology to actually do things that is not possible otherwise. So I think it's a lot of opportunities for not just the regular students, but for the students who we don't typically think of as, students say in a classroom, regular high school or middle school or elementary.
Very good.
And I would agree. I think just offering students as many choices as possible, we tend to leave a lot of students behind, which is the normal traditional system that we have. So just being able to reach students where they are, I think you involve equity when you're doing that, or able to hook a much greater audience.
So I want to stop and ask real quick, because in your particular case in Lammersville, some of this was aimed at re-attracting people back into the public school system. And can you speak to that a little bit and how you've leveraged that to remarket yourself to those folks?
Right. So in Lammersville, we've offered an online and hybrid system. So students have the choice of, if it works for you, you can have all of your classes online. Some students don't opt for that. A lot of students like to have the interaction. They want some of the traditional high school experience, but they don't want to go to every single class. So maybe there's some classes you like better than others. You want to go through some at your own pace, so you're going to go to those online. Some of those you're going to take at the high school itself in a physical environment with a teacher. So it's all about kind of mixing and choosing what's going to work best for you. And one of the key benefits to that too is that if you're a student in one of those pathways, you still get to attend prom, you still get to participate in sports like a regular high school student would. And a lot of times if you're a homeschool student, you might be missing out on some of those opportunities. So I think taking some of those benefits out to the community has made them reconsider, what is the role of school and what can school mean to me.
Very good. Cammie?
I believe that in this time we're experiencing significant change, and really the most important skill that we can empower kids with is that ability to learn, right? So having real conversations around what learning looks like, and when we walk into classrooms knowing that most of what we see is compliance and not really engagement or empowerment even for students. So we need our students to know who they are as learners, and we need them to be empowered so they know how they learn best, where to learn best, and how to sift through the multitude of information that is available to them now, because we know that it's not just always from the teacher, but it's coming from all of these different sources. So the more we can help them have significant skills in being able to aggregate that and sift through it and understand it, that's where it's going to pay off, right, for our kids. So it isn't just about giving them content anymore, but the skills, those soft skills that we talked about, those are so much more important now than they used to be, I believe.
Very good. So the next question kind of builds on this, and just what's the most important work you or your institution are doing right now helping this transition along?
I think in Campbell we're really working with our administrators and our teachers right now to see the value of making those changes and understanding the why that's critical for our time. A lot of times we think we have 10 years to make that adjustment, but I think we don't have 10 years. I think we have to move a little bit faster. So our kids are ready. They're walking through the door. We're seeing different issues with behaviors and learning issues in our kindergarten and first grade classrooms that we haven't seen before. And I do think that is because we're seeing our first wave of students come through the door that are growing up in a digital environment where we talked about having those devices in their hands since they could barely even open their eyes, right? So these kids are coming in way different learning needs than we've seen in the past, and our teachers are sort of struggling a little bit to figure out why that is and why this traditional model that we've been following for so long isn't working for all kids.
We've matured as far as like tech integration goes. I think for a long time people were touting, we have a one-to-one Chromebook program or we have iPads in the classroom, and at this point I don't think it's good enough to say that. I think you need to be talking about what you're doing for the teachers to really make that impact. And it has to be ongoing, it has to be long-term, it has to be something that we're involving administrators with too, because administrators aren't necessarily familiar with what that looks like in the classroom. So I think the work we're doing supporting teachers and bringing them along is the most important thing that we're doing right now.
Very good.
I think one of the things, I agree with both of you. And the other thing I think we need to be mindful is, I think you mentioned this, is like with all the apps and all the vendors, we want to make sure that our student data is protected. So I think that's one of the focus areas that we have also, we haven't reached where we need to be, but that's something that we have started focusing because we put all these things into the apps, and it's all good things, but we have to also make sure that everything that we have to make sure that the companies follow these rules, California specific and federal. So that's one of our focus areas, to keep our data protected.
Policy-wise, these shifts that you guys are trying to make, are there still, what are the policies that need to change to allow some of this to move forward more rapidly, or just move forward, period? Is it how you account for attendance, from a legislative standpoint, how you account for hours of instruction? What are some of those things that are sticking points?
I think attendance would probably be a key issue when we were talking about true like online hybrid programs. Like, how do you account if a student is in that program? Mm-hmm. Is it that they're making progress through the content that you've given them? Is it because they're showing up for a set amount of time? Traditionally we've counted if a student's there or not, and that's how you get funding, and that's what policies are based on. So it takes rethinking some of those to make it work, and making sure that you're not losing that funding with students. And I think another policy is when you're thinking about devices and rolling those out to students, are they going to be able to bring their own devices? Are they going to be able to use phones in class, those types of things? Making sure that that's all aligned and thought out before you roll it out.
Very good, thank you. Either of you have anything else to add?
I think it's important that we bring our school boards and those pieces of our institution along with us. So often I find that while they want to be helpful, they don't truly understand that need or the why behind what we're doing sometimes. And so it's important that we bring them along and make sure they're aware of all of the changes that are happening in education as well. Because they may not be as familiar with it as we are. So just making sure we're all understanding and moving forward.
Very good.
And I think, one of the things I think everybody is kind of challenged with is the money part. So I think that's one of the things I think policy-wise, or coming up from the state, it'll be nice to have extra money for all the districts to do,
Do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So things like social emotional learning, personalized and specialized professional development, understanding digital instructional design, administrative redesign, AR, VR, these are topics that you see a lot about. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on those, the impact that you see some of those having positively, negatively on the learning experience? Anyone, if you just want to focus on one or a couple, that's fine.
It's interesting because we've talked a little bit about STEAM and what that means, and how we really all hooked sort of into that STEAM idea and program and maker spaces and that type of thing. But as far as like AR and VR and some of those, having kids being able to program drones and do some of those really exotic type of technologies, which aren't that exotic anymore, but they are in classrooms still. And some of that is because our teachers it's not accessible to them yet. Like they don't have the time to spend and learn how to code, so therefore they don't know how to bring it into their classroom. So while we can bring it in at a light level, we can't really do it in depth with many of our teachers at this time. Certainly we see that with our lower grade teachers trying to integrate things like computer science and some of those, if they don't have to teach science, or they can just skim through the textbook and teach it on a light level, that works if they don't have a science background. So it is sort of helping teachers find those expertise points and people they can bring in and connect with, and where can they go learn, or how do we help them find time and make space so that they feel like they're confident in being able to share that in classrooms. And I also think that some of those technologies are changing so quickly that it's hard in schools to say we're going to latch onto this because we have to invest quite a chunk of money into something like that. So we have a kit of Google Expedition, right? Like we have 30 units that we take from classroom to classroom and school to school. And that's been great. But even that technology has, we've had it for 2 years and already I feel like it's out of date. So it's hard to know where to lay your money down and how to invest when things around you are just, it's like quicksand. You just are not quite sure if it's going to be, what's the next thing? Will the next thing cost less money? And what's the next app? Or what's the next, it's difficult to make decisions, I think, in this climate.
I would agree. And I think, going out and talking to teachers and thinking along the lines of like hurdles and roadblocks for them, they always bring up time. So one of the things we're really trying to do is like carve out time for teachers. We have a blended learning academy that we take a cohort of teachers through, and we carve out time so they can come in and play with some of those things. And it's not all the teachers in the district. It's really focused at those kind of in the middle of the learning curve. We know that early adopters are going to take some of that stuff on their own and run with it. Some people you're probably never going to catch, but those people who are in the middle, you try to bring them in and give them some time to play with those things and become advocates and have them thinking about how that's impacting the classroom.
Very good.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. And then I think one of the things I think is it is good to have those because they allow us to transport our students to places that we cannot go on field trips and, like even climate change and all those topics, right? I mean, some of the things when they see the effect, that's when we can educate our future citizens, saying, oh yeah, this is what's happening to the oceans, when this plastic is dumped. So I think I've seen like some of those lessons on the VI platform, and I felt that, that's more powerful way of teaching. But then there's all these challenges that you talked about, like the technology gets outdated, then we have to train the teachers to use that, and
Very good. So just last question and is, what have you gotten out of today maybe that you hadn't thought of, or, something that's kind of provoked a little bit of thinking that you might go back and chew on a little bit more for change?
I would say really thinking about it from, how systems are designed to support these things, and how often we're trying to fit what we're doing into a traditional model where it's very top down. But a lot of these things, when they become successful, it's a little bit more organic. You hook people into it, you have them play with something, experience something, and then you're able to explain, well, this is how it could be used in a classroom. So developing systems to support that and making sure that you have the people in place who can, kind of a middle ground to work with teachers to make that happen in the classroom. It's something that I'm thinking more about.
Very good.
Yeah, what I've been thinking is, seeing all the different people here, most of us have the same challenges. So that was kind of a realization that we're not alone in this. And then the other thing is, like, sometimes we try to solve all the problems, and I really liked what Campbell's trying to do with design thinking, and it's not all about solving. You try to do that 3-step model that you presented. So I think that's something to do. We can't really solve all sometimes we have to ask the questions and, take the time to understand more than trying to just go in and solve.
Yeah, I love that idea of thinking about the system and the way we've organized our system, and really the idea of flipping that system and comparing education to Amazon was really interesting. And thinking, when we talk student-centered, or students first, what does that really mean? And is our system really support that in reality? And so our district is structured very classically and top-down. So to be able to flip that around a little bit, and even on a smaller scale at Campbell School of Innovation, just really thinking the different roles that teachers could play, that idea of how do we restructure even our teams and the way our teachers interact with each other, and how we assign students and what that could look like got some wheels turning.
Awesome. Y'all have any questions for these three while we have them up here? Lonnie?
I just want to say you're awesome. All
Yep.
three of you guys, awesome. Super, we got the smart people here.
Yeah.
It's really great. I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you guys.
So, well, thank you, the three of you, for being with us today. We appreciate it, and especially doing this for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.